Hi, my name is a Democracy and I'm a beanaholic. Usually when it comes to passing fads, I fall dangerously close to the stereotypical hipster, in layman's terms, a pretentious curmudgeon. No, Becky, for the last time I will not play Fortnite with you. I am an epic gamer who only plays the most epic games to achieve the epicest heights of gaming epicitude. Bingo. I kid, of course. I may not love every Tom, Dick, and Minecraft that blasts its way into the mainstream, but I respect the value it holds for those who do. In the case of Fall Guys, I can't help but be head over heels with its boundless charm, amusing antics, glorious physics, and astronomical entertainment value. In less than a week, I went from dabbling in a few shows to sinking deep into multi-hour marathons. The fruits of my labor have heralded plenty of crowns. Jump Showdown, easy peasy. Hexagon, I'm a honeycomb master. Royal fuck all, it was my first crown in my third ever show. Have I won it since? Fall Mountain?
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take this.
I'm no supreme being, but as of this recording, I'm roughly 20 hours in with 11 wins to my name. Through my handful of victories and my numerous defeats, I've been brewing a ranking of where each stage stands in terms of quality. Keep in mind that this video is from my sole perspective. I'm not deeply immersed in the latest online pro strats, I lean more towards silly fun than sweaty competition, and I may value different things than you in a good show. Without further ado, let's kick off my ranking of every Fall Guys stage from worst to best. Number 25, Perfect Match. 3 rounds, 2 fruit, 4 fruit, then 6 across 16 tiles. Flashing sporadically, you're challenged with recalling their placement to match the chosen safe fruit. As the round progresses, the secure platforms dwindle to the final 3 to qualify. This pairing is only flawless if you have the memory of a goldfish. The memorization period is excessively generous. Difficulty is added by increasing the number of fruits, but by decreasing the number of safe platforms, you have ample time to watch the behavior of others and qualify as a passive follower. Theoretically, you could bait people to false platforms, but that assumes the vast majority won't prioritize victory above all else, which in my experience has been true in every single game. As the memorization difficulty increases to a, let's be honest, not that intense level, you can turn your brain off and follow the pack. Even when platforms become overloaded with beans, it's surprisingly easy to stay afloat amidst the grabby goobers. That's the only solace in this map, trying to bait or bash people into the abyss for funsies. Otherwise, it's a passive, dull game that practically plays itself. When it comes to what game is the worst, you might argue the consistency of Perfect Match makes it better than other lackluster games. For me, I'd rather risk the biscuit for a good time than stare at baby's first memory game and rot my mind. This game would become dramatically more interesting with a larger pool of randomized fruit, and particularly with platform weight limitations. Restrict platforms to a set number of beans depending on the round, making the lazy followers get lost in the scramble. Even with these additions, it's hard for a matching game to compare to the primarily action-packed stages the game emphasizes. I'm glad there's variety, and I love the concept of puzzles, they just need a boost in difficulty to stay engaging beyond your first few rounds. In its current state, the stage is a perfect match for today's bottom honors. Number 24, Jinxed. Let me show you how Jinxed works. Jinxed is an absolute shit show with a bunch of greased up diseased beans playing domino tag. As the Jinx players grow, the odds of remaining unjinxed decreases exponentially. The only bit of control you have as an individual in this game is the minor impact you can make on dodging the curse. Skilled players can get shifty for longer than your average bean, but there's a point where numbers outweigh strategy. In contrast to the bloated fruit matchmaker, Jinxed is often over in a matter of seconds. Your victory feels far more up to the mercy of random masses with a heaving dash of luck than most stages. I will commend the mild satisfaction the chaos brings, even if that madness sorely lacks individual control, especially when you take grab latency into account. Jinxed is good fun when it pops up rarely as a silly scramble, but when it becomes a frequent staple in your daily rotation, it represents everything frustrating about team games as an individual player. Number 23, Royal Fumble. There is no note more sour than ending a great show on this disappointing game of cat and mouse. 90 seconds, one tail, last furry standing claims the crown. In contrast to Jinxed, you do have a dramatic amount of control when it comes to your individual decision making when you have the tail. The map is cleverly designed to let adept players make wild plays to juke their pursuers. The frantic chase is exhilarating, so let me be clear, Royal Fumble isn't all bad. There's two issues that bring it down dramatically outside of other games to come that cast a tall shadow. First, grab latency is horrendous. It will always feel frustrating to get your tail stolen from a few meters away. I get it, on their screen they're right on me, but I can only go on what I see. Though that can be irritating, the larger dilemma is how to handle the 90 seconds. In any tail game, you quickly realize that only the final few moments of the match truly matter. Royal Fumble has more stakes in this regard due to lower numbers, making it harder to make a last second steal from a bean channeling his inner serpentine. Even so, it feels empty to hold the tail for 90% of the match only to lose it in the final moment. The obvious solution is to award points to the players as they hold the tail. This would create serious tension between some players, but then the problem is reversed for the others. If you can't get the tail in the opening minute, you may as well give up. A way to circumvent this could be awarding bonus points for stealing a tail. Even with that, I'm not sure there's a perfect answer. Much like Jinxed, the chaos of Royal Fumble can be enjoyable from time to time, especially with a higher level of individual impact. Unfortunately, the game's flaws weigh it down far too hard for anything other than low tier status. Number 22, Tail Tag. Early round Royal Fumble is a free-for-all with only enough tails for half the beans to play dress up. It suffers from the same two issues as its final match counterpart: dial-up tail plucking and no incentive to participate seriously in the first 75% of the game. Having a tail at the start is a huge advantage given to you at random, and it's much easier to hold a tail than it is to claim one thanks to certain advantageous defensive points and misdirection from all the tails enticing split attention from the seekers. The only reason it gets the edge over Royal Fumble is that it isn't for all the marbles. I'd rather gamble on tail tag mid-game than fumble the final match. Number 21, Egg Scramble. Can we get a replay on that coin clip? Yeah, that, but with eggs flying around like lubed up balls shooting their way into a bunch of birds' nests. You're a chicken with a cornucopia of pre-hatched chicks plopping center stage. 3 separate teams play a game of theft and defense to keep their eggs locked down. Most are worth a single point, with the exception of 3 golden eggs worth a whopping 5 burger, a significant momentum shifter for those who lay claim to their bounty. Speaking of momentum, it's the primary detractor of the scramble. On a positive note, the beginning of the game is critical and it's largely decided by you and your team's skillful egg retrieval. After that initial whirlwind, however, there's often 1 to 2 teams lacking in points. This leads to a snowball effect where 2 teams gang up on one to make sure that team loses. It's in their best interest, and I can't fault them for that. That doesn't make it any more enjoyable to be on the losing end of a match's long duration when the outcome is often decided in the first 20 seconds. The amount of players once again turn it into chaos. It is extremely difficult to steal eggs once you're behind, and winning teams can commit primarily to defense, factors that make everything outside of the initial scramble feel like chaos that, while fun like Jinxed, has a huge splash of luck involved. That randomness is a double-edged sword that sharpens too harshly in a negative direction to let Egg Scramble squeeze out of the bottom 5. Number 20, Fall Mountain. If you've caught on to what I devalue in a Fall Guys stage, you might not be surprised to see Fall Mountain this far down the list. I appreciate stages that value player skill over luck. I also love a dash of randomness in the mix, but it shouldn't be the main driver. Instead of skill being key, Fall Mountain is more about game knowledge. If you know the optimal pass to take, you not only have a huge leg up over your competition that doesn't in terms of speed, you're also subject to less danger. When multiple players follow these routes, it becomes more about whether you take a sudden curveball to the face harder than your rival beans, or if you faceplant after jumping for no consistent reason. A quick race with only a single victor makes any error devastating. These mistakes can be of your own doing, but at times Fall Jesus takes the wheel and decides it's your time to lose. Those optimal paths decrease the likelihood of this happening, especially with some skilled dodges, but it doesn't eliminate it. The encouragement to follow the same route every time makes Fall Mountain become increasingly repetitive as well. I went through a cycle of disliking it because other players were always ahead, to learning how to win, to then getting tired of following a predetermined path that uses random map elements and physics to give players an edge. There are absolutely things to love about Fall Mountain, and I'm sure both you and I will never forget the first time we plucked that crown out of the sky. It's by no means a bad stage. It's a solid one that becomes more repetitive as you play the game more, which is not good for long-term play. Number 19, Fruit Shoot. Hug the side and hope the map doesn't shoot a watermelon up your ass. Similar to Fall Mountain, this map has an optimal way through and only deviates in outcomes by the fruit cannon's mercy. Most people know by now not to go out the middle. It boils down to who gets rammed the hardest by the fruity barrage. Despite the procedural, luck-filled nature, I have to admit that of the chaotic mix so far, Fruit Shoot manages to be the most entertaining. Perhaps it's because I love watching innocent players get mollywopped by giant fruit and churros, myself included. The random element, while somewhat undesirable, does keep things fresh, and I do love the overall concept. I would say this is my average line for maps in the game. I can find redeeming qualities in every single one, but from here on out we're taking a steep climb upward to the royal peak of today's list. Number 18, Hit Parade. It's no coincidence that as we hit the above average maps, we're digging into the meat of Fall Guys' many races. Of the game's categories, the mad dashes to the finish line are the strongest overall. Hit Parade is a meaningful part of that roster. It boasts a variety of different creative hazards in a short romp that emphasizes minimal mistakes to qualify, for the most part. I wish the beginning tubes had a bigger benefit to successfully making it across. Doing so from a bad starting position can be quite tough, but falling down doesn't feel costly at all. I get dunked about as often as I make it across, and I'm always in the running for a high placement. The mid-block pushing between center and side openings is a creative idea with a cluster of spinners beforehand. In theory, it would cause players to push against each other for different directions. In practice, almost everyone falls in the same two lines toward the center and enters the mosh pit. The final two hazards, swinging balls and ascending the slime slope with bouncers, will decide victory. If you take a hefty setback from either, you likely won't qualify. In terms of race hazards, I would say these even lean toward the easier end of the spectrum, especially when the slide slime slope is so safe on the side. An important thing to note with critiques like this is it doesn't mean I can't enjoy the map. I still have plenty of fun hitting my way through the parade, it just doesn't have the difficulty and complexity to stack up against the better stages to come. Number 17, Gatecrash. In a similar vein to Hit Parade, Gatecrash is a mad dash that doesn't allow for many errors. The map itself isn't that large, and the gates are consistent in their movement. For veteran players, it makes navigating through the bouncing doors a breeze. Once again, like Hit Parade, even though it's not overly complex, it is executed well. Diving over the doors for close calls is a blast, baiting people into those doors with bad timings brings devious joy, and the final sled down is a literal throw ride. Even if it's simple, the execution is plenty to stride above the gates to the average line. Number 16, Tiptoe. More like shit show. Fortune favors the bold, with no shortage of beans willing to dive into death's embrace at the possibility of finding the right path. Frankly, I'm thankful for their unabashed bravery because it makes it easy for me to sit back and count the tiles. For as much as the game can be ended in 15 seconds by happenstance, you'll often end up in a circle jerk of bobble and beans trying to force some unfortunate sap onto a random tile as a guinea pig. While that standoff goes on, you can look in the distance to the final few rows to notice shaking tiles, indicating that they are imposters. There is only one single path at the end with 2 blocks in a row. Through process of elimination, you can figure out the final solution before reaching it, a notable advantage for the observant. The mesh of strategy, boldness, and chaos blends together beautifully. There's a rising tension throughout the game that makes risky moves more costly, all leading up to a heart-pumping final dash. From a competitive angle, the chaos can be frustrating, but if you're here for a good time and a lot of plummeting players, you'll love Tiptoe as much as I do. Number 15, Jump Club. If you like tense games, Jump Club provides some of the same thrill in a flipped manner. Instead of smashing into the level in hopes of finding success, the level takes a turn battering you. 2 poles spin high and low, forcing you to jump or be swept away. The lower pole speeds up as the match continues, creating an exponentially rising skill curve. This makes for an extremely satisfying yet simple platforming challenge. What adds to the complexity other than gauging the speed are the hordes of players crossing paths as you try to navigate to advantageous positions for each jump. This can be both frustrating and hilarious. The map itself is mostly great, though sometimes the physics wonk out in a weird way, making you fall for seemingly no reason at inopportune times, or straight up taking you for the ride of your life. Lag definitely plays a role here, but it's less noticeable than something like the tail teleports. It also suffers from being an inferior variant to a stage we'll be seeing later. Despite a few shortcomings though, it's well worthy of a spot in an increasingly excellent top 15. Number 14, DoorDash. If the idea of throwing yourself at fake platforms on tiptoe got you pumped up, DoorDash was made for you. A throwback to game shows like Takeshi's Castle, better known as Most Extreme Elimination Challenge for those in the States, this game is all about thrusting yourself blindly at doors in the hope you'll crash through to the next wave. As you continue, the number of real doors decreases, making for more whiffs and clogged holes full of refried beans. This map is a tornado of players throwing themselves wildly toward the finish line. There's a huge amount of randomness, but the satisfying act of bonking into doors makes me forget all about it. As an early map, there's usually more than enough time to recover, so you aren't punished too harshly for whiffs. It's a bit of a crapshoot at the end if you're in the middle of the pile, but it's fun all the same. It's a novelty that is yet to wear off, and though it may not have the depth of other races, it's centered around a main attraction that has more than enough value to push it toward the top half. Number 13, Team Tail Tag. If the rumors I've heard of people's distaste for team games are true, there's gonna be some contention with the next few entries. In particular, I'm sure you're wondering why I would rate Team Tail Tag so high compared to its mediocre counterparts. It's easy. Tail Tag eliminates one of my two problems with tail games. While lag still plays a decisive role every now and again, it's much more forgiving when losing your individual tail doesn't ruin your chances of qualifying. This is equally true for holding the tail for the majority of the game and losing it. As long as you're a solid contributor to the team throughout, you've done your part. The only problem that the team variant introduces is the concept of overtime. I'm all for the idea of no ties, however, I think there are better ways to handle it than punishing the winning team by forcing them to continue play. I would suggest removing the leading group when overtime hits from play along with their tails, then make the remaining teams fight it out. It's a small complaint, but there have been a few times when I've gone into double or triple or quadruple and even once quintuple overtime with the lead, then lost because we faltered briefly at the wrong moment. It's the name of the game, I suppose, and I certainly do enjoy this version a lot more. I may not have complete control in team games, but I appreciate their deviation from the other game types and enjoy cooperating with friends and randoms, even if the latter are hit or miss in their skill. Number 12, Fall Ball. This is a game that could rank higher or lower depending on the match. If you get a game of 6v6 with evenly matched skill levels, it can be a blast. If you get a huge match of 9v9 or a tiny group of 4v4 or any number with disproportionate skill, getting washed for 150 seconds can feel like an eternity. I wouldn't even say that dominating on the other end is particularly fun. Scoring is far more satisfying when there's stakes, something this game often lacks when the timer hits the halfway mark. For that reason, I decided to keep Fall Ball out of the top 10. In top form, Fall Ball is arguably a top 5 stage for me. As it stands, with the fluctuating nature of player skill, it lands just inside the top half. Number 11, Hoarders. Hoarders in some ways is a better version of Fall Ball. You're knocking balls around, but instead of a standard football setup, you score by keeping balls in your team's quadrant of the map. This can be much more difficult than it sounds, especially since this is typically an early game with nearly 40 players bouncing balls all over the place. What I appreciate about Hoarders against something like Jinxed is that in spite of the masses all trying to do different things, you can make some amazing solo plays that clutch the victory for your team that are an absolute rush. Playing incredible defense at the right moment or a clutch steal in the final seconds not only lets you ride a high, it's one you get to carry your team along with you for. Hoarders definitely has some uncontrollable elements to it due to the high player count. It can be difficult to coordinate steals without a team of friends backing you, and the overtime issue present in Tail Tag is a similar issue here. Even so, Hoarders is a magnificent mess that I'm always happy to take part in. Number 10, Hoopsy Daisy. Right up there with Fall Ball, Hoopsy Daisy is a team game more reliant on skill, especially on an individual level. With careful positioning, a dash of luck in the ring spawns, and adept jumping talent, you can be a serious MVP for your team. I love the variety of ways to access hoops, from spinning turntables to escalation ramps to the ground to the scaled heights in each corner. Predicting where the next hoops will show is always a fun mind game, especially when it comes to the mad race for the golden rings worth 5 points. I do like their presence as a comeback factor, but they can also work in a random way to provide a greater advantage to a team that is already dominating. It's very difficult to balance allowing comebacks while letting player skill win the day. I think Hoopsy Daisy strikes a great but not perfect line. It can be extremely difficult to come back from an early deficit without claiming the golden ring, something that is based as much in skill as it is luck or strategy. Still, there's far more redeeming factors to Hoopsy Daisy than not, well earning at the first spot in the top 10. Number 9, Rock and Roll. This game is all about rock solid D. All things equal, you should make it to the second portion of the ball pushing lanes at the same time, where they open up completely. The first few times I played this game, people let speed be the sole deciding factor of victory. Now it's all about getting out there and tossing up an iron wall of beans, shoving their balls into the corner, and watching them helplessly try to penetrate your dug-in heels. Where this gets exciting compared to any other team game is twofold. First, the bullying element is less present because any team is free to send as many defenders as they like to the bottom. This is at the expense of their ability to push, but a competent defender can hold off multiple beans for ages. The additional wrinkle is the removal of the winning team. Once they score the 100% distance, they are removed from play. This leaves the two remaining teams to equally fight it out. Deciding on what assets should go where in terms of offense and defense, making clutch moves at the right moment to stop the ball from picking up speed, grabbing opposite team members is a clever way to throw a wrench in well-laid plans, all are solid ways to play a surprisingly strategic game. There's a brilliant blend of team synergy, individual MVP plays, strategy, and even odds that makes rock and roll far and away my favorite team game. Number 8, Dizzy Heights. Maybe it's that hipster affinity for turntables, but I love me some dizzying circle spinning. There's such a satisfying motion to perfectly lining yourself back and forth to go with the optimal flow to get ahead of the pack. When you don't, getting moshed in between the Doritos like a ping pong ball is hilarious. Then you can bob and weave or face tank huge balls to the face on the way to more turntables, this time requiring more jumps. I have to admit, I have no idea what's down there because I've never fallen off, but it seems like there is a reasonable amount of time to recover for adept players. The final bit gets tons of people who miss out on the jump and even more who get relentlessly berated by balls. I get way too much joy out of watching people get cocky near the end of the map only to get devastated by multiple balls railing them into oblivion. Good times. Dizzy Heights is a map that well encapsulates the entertaining pandemonium of Fall Guys races near their peak. It's a heavy indication of just how high the quality is of the final 7 for this to come in at the number 8 spot. Number 7, Block Party. Of all the games remaining, Block Party is by far the easiest. This is a game I constantly ask myself, how do people get eliminated on this map? Curiously, despite the major lapse in difficulty, I find an oddly high level of amusement wobbling around the small plane dodging the various platforms that pop up. There's a nice variety in what they throw at you, though some configurations are dramatically easier than others. For example, the ending when the space shrinks is much more challenging when it's blocks than jumping bits. At that point, it's just a rhythm game. When it's the blocks, you could end up getting clogged in a group and falling to your doom. At least the people I love to look back at when it's over do. I wish I could quantify why I find it so enjoyable. Perhaps it's the moment-to-moment quick twitch decision-making and decent level of execution required. The thrill of the hunt may play a small role as well. I do wish they would be a bit speedier and more random with what they throw your way, but I still find it plenty rewarding to come out on top in Block Party. Number 6, Rollout. If you want to talk bloodlust, Rollout is the quintessential griefing map. It's a service that needs to be done because much like Block Party, it can be quite easy to survive for a long time. I similarly question how people die until I realize people are constantly plotting the downfall of their fellow beings. Grabbing in this game is often as dangerous for the offender as it is for the receiver, so there's plenty of spilled beans by the time the map is done rolling out. I really appreciate the differentiation in speed, movement, platform types, and sporadic availability to keep it fresh. Even if I do find the stage easy, it's not as if I'm on complete autopilot. In fact, I spend a large majority of my time looking for opportunities to Superman my way down to a wall, something that is at its best when a brave newbie follows you and whiffs completely. I do feel like the speed should increase at a more rapid rate, and I would really love to see the platforms change direction intermittently to throw a serious curveball into the mix. With a bit more complexity, Rollout could easily crack the top 5. As it stands, it's still an exciting experience all around, whether you're brave, devious, or playing it cool. Number 5, Jump Showdown. In reference to the earlier Jump Club, Jump Showdown is where the endgame takes a serious upward swing in quality. I could see arguments of why this map would be boring due to conceptual simplicity, but I have to disagree. The tension created starts a slow crescendo as the platforms slowly plummet. By the time only 2 remain, the speed of the double-sided lower pole is getting frightening. I love that the 2 platforms left are random, and I especially love how rapidly the speed of the pole gets going. By the time it's zipping in full circles before the top comes around, my heart is beating out of my chest. It may seem like a simple bit of movement and jumping at first glance, but being one of the finalists is exhilarating. It requires lightning quick decision making toward the end, and as it narrows to the final few, people begin panicking and consider getting grabby to relieve the looming anxiety. Winning is incredible, though I do have to admit I'm always able to laugh off a silly loss because I'm nearly always to blame. The only slight downside I could point out is the physics sometimes cause your character to trip and ragdoll on nothing. It's not overly common, but it happens often enough to be an overwhelming end. That minor hiccup is not nearly enough to keep this high-octane finisher out of a phenomenal top 5. Number 4, Seesaw. Perhaps my most controversial top inclusion, I am here to shout my love for Seesaw loud and proud. I hear you. The tragedy of the commons is in full effect. People using a shared resource in their own self-interest instead of working together to solve the problem and succeed as a group. That selfish disaster bait is the beauty of Seesaw. Some men just want to cherry bomb beans into oblivion, and this map lets me do that. Pulling off clutch dives to progress forward ahead of the falling mob is so gratifying. Making proper use of the Seesaw physics is extremely fun, screwing other people over makes me uncomfortably happy, and finishing ahead of the clusterfuck in the back is a real treat. It is sad how much the starting portion plays a role in your ability to excel in the front. I'm also not a fan of the ragdoll physics that sometimes decide you're gonna die whether you like it or not. Outside of those minor issues, this is the pure essence of me first anarchy in all the best ways possible. Number 3, TheWhirligig. If Seesaw's lawless lands are the fault of the player, Whirligig is a case where the level decides to take a turn and brutalize beans in a way no other level does. The beginning says it all. You can't jump over a single pole without seeing players get smacked all over the place. Sometimes it works to your benefit, which is helpful to avoid the mob at the yellow jump pads. You can grab and go up on the ledge, but having the skill and timing to be rewarded on the pads is great. The fans require the same. Great timing with the exception of the 3 in the middle. Other than bullying new players, I'm not sure what their purpose is. Everyone has already picked up on running through the meeting points on either side being 100% safe. Even new players are going to notice that route and then they're just going to take it the rest of their time with the game. It's a bit sad that those fans aren't more threatening. Then of course there's the end. 2 sides with small pole spinning platforms to a big one and a fan blocking the exit, or the path up the middle to a speedy fan that will banish you to the shadow realm with bad luck. This section has to be responsible for the most deaths of any race map. With 2 checkpoints nearby, spectating will net you hysterical shots of players making the silliest errors and getting punished beautifully for it. It's a huge part of the appeal, but my favorite part of the map is how much platforming prowess it asks of you. It's nothing otherworldly, but compared to a lot of the other race maps, there is a serious element of timing required to make many of the jumps. As a huge lover of platforming games as a kid, this level is a wonderful playground. Easily the best traditional race in the game and well worth a spot in the top 3. Number 2, Hexagon. I went back and forth for a long time with essentially a 1A and a 1B, with Hexagon barely getting edged out for the number 1 spot. Hexagon might be the most unique concept in the entire game. It takes elements of tiptoe, uses the platforming mechanics to their full ability, and throws a varied total of players into the fray to see how they strategize to claim victory. It's a very different game with 6 versus 18 players. The more players there are, the more luck plays a role. There's absolutely a place for luck in the game, and it is a sizable part of what keeps Hexagon interesting. Strategy and adept play is rewarded immensely, but there are times where a guy will drop in your zone from above and throw you for a loop. You have to be adapting on the fly in an instant at all times, plus keeping your composure and skillful precision during downtime. Identifying moments when you need to isolate yourself and ruin the path of other players is vital, as is your own execution in choosing the right pass from top to bottom. I love that falling quickly isn't necessarily a death sentence, since you get lower map control and can go on a tear, removing a lot of real estate for the people who will inevitably drop. My first Hexagon win came from that exactly. Falling low like a dingus, then removing all options on the bottom floor for the god gamers above. This stage is incredibly creative, insanely nerve-wracking, thrilling to win, and even fun to lose and recognize when the cards didn't fall in your favor and what moves you can make next time to improve. It was so close to top honors, but it had to go to the number 1 best stage in Fall Guys, Slime Climb. The only stage in the game that is a race against the clock, Slime Climb opts for a clever twist of having the level slowly becoming steeped in deadly slime. This puts immediate pressure on you to perform, which creates the signature chaos so many Fall Guys maps highlight. The me-first attitude is in full effect, causing a vacuum of mistakes to collide in an explosive way that regularly cuts the number of entrants into a quarter or more. I've had 38 people come into Slime Climb with only 6 qualifying. It cannot be understated how important performing well at the beginning is. I really love seeing all the different decision making from players. Some opting for bold shortcuts that get congested, others that play it so safe they decrease their margin for error if they do make any mistake. Then players like me who try to strike a balance of those and find the holes in the mob to make my way toward the front. There is absolutely an element of luck at play in terms of what the other players choose to do and how it collides with your own plans, but that's all part of the fun. Learning to consistently best Slime Climb is a rite of passage on your way to raking in more crowns than you'll know what to do with. The differentiation in hazards as you climb from the pushers to the moving floors and bumpers, tubes, hammers, and swinging balls of slime floors highlights how many great mechanics Fall Guys has to offer, making it a fantastic test of your skills. The sky really is the limit in terms of how creative future maps can get, and I'm confident with how impressive the current roster is that we're in for a pleasant surprise when Season 2 drops. As of Season 1 for me, there is no other map that reaches the same heights as the quintessential Fall Guys experience, Slime Climb. What do you all think of Fall Guys and the quality of its stages? Let us know in the comments below. I have been obsessed with this game for the last few weeks, but I'm still cooking up other content I'd love you to join me for. Please consider subscribing for all that and leave a like if you enjoyed today's video. And of course, I want to thank you all for watching today. Much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.